What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video, I'm going to be going through my Week 1 top 40 running back rankings. I put out my running back start sits a couple days ago. Now we're actually diving in, ranking these running backs, splitting them up into different tiers. If you enjoy the video, do me a huge favor, hit that like button and subscribe. Questions, comments, feel free to drop them down below. But let's just dive right into it here. Not going to spend a ton of time on these elite options because we know they're locks in your lineup. So in tier 1, I have Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, Bijan Robinson, and Jahmyr Gibbs. These are my top 4 running backs heading into the season. I don't think any of these matchups scare me off to the point where I'm going to have them outside my top 4. Then moving into tier 2, I have Devon Achane, Chase Brown, Bucky Irving, Derrick Henry, Ashton Genty, and Jonathan Taylor. Now for Achane, he has been dealing with that calf injury. All the reports we've gotten have been positive about him coming in, playing well in week 1. I believe he's back at practice on Monday, so that is a great sign. I think this is a solid matchup here against the Colts, so I am going to have him here in tier 2. I'm just not super concerned about it. Now, if we're hearing that he's going to be on some sort of snap count, or maybe he has, some sort of setback, then we'll adjust. But as of right now, I don't have any reservations about firing up Devon Achane. Then for Chase Brown, the Bengals, I believe, are close to a touchdown favorites in this game, so there should be a lot of rushing volume. They're going to put up a lot of points. Chase Brown was the workhorse last year, especially when Zach Moss went down. I think he's a really strong play here in week 1. Bucky Irving, like him as an RB1 option. Derrick Henry, always going to be a viable play. I do think Derrick Henry's a better option in these beatdown matchups where the Ravens are going to be huge favorites. There is a possibility where the Bills go up and maybe we don't get that, crazy high volume rushing performance from Derrick Henry, but obviously he's going to be a lock in your lineup every single week. Ashton Genty, not worried about him kind of having a slow start. Think he's going to be the workhorse from day 1. And then we close out this tier with Jonathan Taylor. Tier 3, still guys that I feel very confident firing up into my lineup. We have Josh Jacobs, James Conner, Alvin Kamara, and Kyren Williams. I think James Conner and Kamara are probably both going to be ranked higher earlier on in the season than when they were drafted. Kamara specifically has just been really dominant early on in the season and then has really kind of tailed off in the second half. They're going to be big underdogs in this game, as they're in pretty much every single matchup this year. So the receiving volume should be there. I like Kamara as a fringe RB1 option. And then, on the other side of this matchup with James Conner going up against the Saints, they're probably going to be leading early on. Probably going to be a lot of rushing volume for James Conner. I do have him as an RB1 this week. And then for Kyren Williams, some people might think this is a little bit low. I do think we're going to see a decrease in his overall usage. I don't think he's going to be a 75+% opportunity share guy. I think we're going to see Blake Corum and or Jarquez Hunter get involved, but I still think he's very playable as a high-end RB2 option. Then in tier 4, we have Kenneth Walker, James Cook, and Amarian Hampton. It seems like some people are kind of fading Kenneth Walker at this point. He had a lot of hype early on in the offseason. He was banged up throughout training camp. Zach Charbonnet's been getting a lot of hype. As you're going to see with these rankings, I am still very in on Kenneth Walker. I still view him as their clear-cut running back 1, and I still think he's very playable as a high-end RB2 option. Then for James Cook, this is just not a great matchup here, right? This is a very tough Ravens defense, but he's going to be the running back 1 on one of the best offenses in the NFL. You can only drop him, to a certain point. And then for Amarian Hampton, I know he's a rookie. Some people might think he'll start off slow, but I think the risk of that has really been lessened with Najee Harris just missing a ton of time, not being super involved in the practices, because he could have been the guy that was taking a lot of work early on in the season, but Hampton's been the guy in there, getting the run with the ones. He's a first-round pick. They clearly are very in on him. So I don't, hate firing up Hampton as a mid-tier RB2 option. It's not a great matchup here against the Chiefs, but I still think Hampton is a really strong start in your lineup. And then the last guy in this tier is going to be Breece Hall. I'm still a believer in Breece Hall. The vibes obviously haven't been great out of the Jets camp. You got these other running backs involved with Braylon Allen, Isaiah Davis. The offense obviously isn't going to be great, but I think Breece Hall is going to get involved as a pass catcher. I just think from a talent perspective, he is their clear-cut RB1. So I believe in the player. I have him here as my running back 18. Then moving into tier 5, these are like our mid to back end RB2 options. I have Tony Pollard, Travion Henderson, Chuba Hubbard, Aaron Jones, and DeAndre Swift. For Tony Pollard, I think he is going to get clear-cut workhorse usage for as long as Tajay Spears is out. It's just tough because he does draw a pretty tough matchup here against the Broncos, especially like rookie quarterback going up against this Broncos defense. That is a tough ask. So I do have him here at running back 19. I think in softer matchups, I could potentially rank him as high as like an RB1, just given the usage I think he's going to get both on the ground and through the air. Then for Travion Henderson, this might seem kind of high for a rookie, especially someone who might be in a split early on with Ramondre Stevenson. I am just higher on Travion Henderson than consensus, and this is a matchup that I think the Patriots could have some success in. And so I'm not expecting Henderson to come out and be a total workhorse, take 65, 70% of the opportunities, but I'm confident he's going to be involved as a pass catcher. I do think he's just their, obviously most talented running back. And so I'm going to have him here as the RB20. Then I'm going to go with Chuba Hubbard. I do think he's going to have strong usage. There are maybe some question marks about the receiving production. I think back-end RB2 is a pretty fair spot to have him. We have Aaron Jones and DeAndre Swift in this same matchup. Two running backs that aren't going to be complete workhorses, but RB1s on offenses that I think both have some upside. Then moving into tier 6, this is where we're getting into the range of like, maybe I don't think you're an amazing starting option, but certainly still playable, especially in the flex, or, maybe you went other position early on outside of running back. So we're going to start off with Tyrone Tracy going up against the Commanders. I think there's some, concern that Tracy starts to lose work to Cam Skadabo throughout the season, but in week 1, I do think he's going to be the clear-cut RB1 option. Obviously not on a great offense, but still someone who's playable as like a fringe RB2. Jaylen Warren, someone who I think could also lose work throughout the season, just signed an extension with the Steelers. I do think, you expect Caleb Johnson to kind of carve out more and more of a role throughout the season. But week 1, I would expect Jaylen Warren to be the more valuable running back, also the guy who's going to get involved as a pass catcher, which, can give him a nice floor and some ceiling in terms of fantasy. Then I have Isaiah Pacheco, one of the running backs I'm more interested in just kind of seeing what his usage looks like, because I think you can see the upside where Isaiah Pacheco could be a fantasy RB1 this year. I think you could also see the downside where this is just a full-on committee with Kareem Hunt, Brashard Smith, Elijah Mitchell all getting involved, and it's just like you never feel totally confident playing Pacheco. So it'd be cool if he went out there, was the clear-cut RB1, but we will have to wait and see. RB27 going to be David Montgomery. This is not a great matchup here against the Packers. Lions are like middle of the pack in terms of implied points, and he is just like the second best running back on his own team. So he's still going to have touchdown upside, but he also doesn't have the highest floor because he's not going to be super involved as a pass catcher, and they are just splitting touches. Plus, this could be a game like they are underdogs, could be a trailing game script, which would obviously favor a guy with the receiving skill set of Jahmyr Gibbs. Then we are getting into Travis Etienne, kind of starting to look at this Jaguars backfield. I don't think anyone can, have full confidence in what this Jaguars backfield is going to look like. I do think between Etienne and Bigsby, who look like they're going to be the top 2 running backs to start off the season, I do prefer Etienne just based on his receiving usage. I think that gives him kind of a more fun skill set and role from a fantasy perspective. So he's going to be in like this mid-tier RB3 range. Then I'm going to have the Broncos running backs back-to-back here, J.K. Dobbins, R.J. Harvey. I do slightly prefer J.K. Dobbins early on in the season. He is like the veteran presence. You have R.J. Harvey coming in here as a rookie, but I don't think Dobbins is just going to come in and like blow RJ Harvey out of the water. Also, just from like a weekly upside perspective, like RJ Harvey has that big play upside where he can rip off a 60-yard run, catch a screen and take it 50 yards to the house. So I think they're both like mid-tier RB3 options. Then the last guy in this tier is going to be Javonte Williams. He's not a pretty play, especially in this matchup here against the Eagles, which could be pretty tough. But it does seem like he's going to be the clear-cut running back one to start off the season. Who knows what happens with Jaden Blue throughout the year. Maybe we see some Miles Sanders. I'm not super sold with like Javonte as a talent at this stage in his career based on how he's looked in back-to-back seasons. But RB1 for a Cowboys offense, if he is the clear-cut top option, that certainly is something for fantasy. And then this final tier, I'd prefer to not play these guys. All these guys are in like some version of a committee. Just going to run through the names: Tank Bigsby, Caleb Johnson, Ramondre Stevenson, Austin Eckler, Jordan Mason, Nick Chubb, Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, Dylan Sampson, Jerome Ford, and Zach Charbonnet. For Tank Bigsby, do think he's taking like that early down role. Could have some upside here in this Chargers offense, getting those short yardage, goal line touches. Caleb Johnson's interesting. I could see him like coming out, having a really solid game on the ground. I could also see him, getting 10 carries, not doing a ton with it, and then not having like any floor due to pass catching. So there's, some upside, also some concern there with Caleb Johnson. Ramondre Stevenson, do think he's going to have a decent split here with Travion Henderson. Then we have Austin Eckler, and I'll kind of just talk about him and Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt or Bill Krosky Merritt together here. I think there's a lot of hype about this Commanders backfield, right? With the trade of Brian Robinson, Eckler's moving up draft boards, Bill Krosky Merritt, he's moving up, he's getting a ton of hype. I think people might be disappointed after week one, and this is not trying to like rain on the parade or anything, but we have to remember that last year, it was not a super valuable backfield, right? You have one guy getting the early down work. That was B-Rob. You have Austin Eckler getting very involved as a pass catcher. And then you have a rushing quarterback who's going to be vulturing a lot of those looks, just taking away opportunities from the running back position. And so I know there's been some shakeup. Some people are excited. I really would just like temper my expectations early on in the season. And just from like a betting perspective, like none of these running backs have a rushing line that's over 40 yards. So that kind of shows you at least what Vegas is thinking about what this running back room is going to look like. But definitely one of the like more interesting backfields to kind of track after week one. Then I have Jordan Mason. I think he'll get some work, like, RB2 behind Aaron Jones. We have Nick Chubb, the only Texans running back here. I'm not sold on Nick Chubb. I think Dameon Pierce could be involved. We'll see what's going on with Woody Marks. But week one, if I had to pick one of these guys, it probably would be Nick Chubb. Then we have this Browns backfield with Dylan Sampson, Jerome Ford. I would not be shocked if this is like very close to a 50-50 split. Dylan Sampson started their last preseason game with the starters, but I don't think he's like pulling away as the RB1 at this point. I think both these guys are going to be pretty involved on a not so great offense. And then the last guy here, Zach Charbonnet. I think he'll be involved. I actually think this is like 41 running backs, so cheated a little bit, but did want to throw Charbon here. I know some people are excited about him. I like him. I've been high on him in back-to-back seasons, but we have just seen consistently that when Kenneth Walker's been healthy, Zach Charbonnet has just not been a viable start for fantasy. So that is going to wrap it up for my top 40/41 running back rankings. Let me know your thoughts down below. If you enjoyed, hit the like button, subscribe. Also coming out this week, I'll have wide receivers, quarterbacks, tight ends, and defenses. So stay tuned for all of that. Thank you all for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next one.